Hi viewers, I'm Tyro, and this is How I Would Make It, where each episode I take a look at a bad or an annoying movie in nerd culture, figure out how I would have changed the story in order to make it a good one. Partially because I'm a stage actor with a huge passion for storytelling and delivering a message to an audience, but mostly because I'm just a lonely nerd with too much time on my hands. What the hell was that? Alright guys, gear up, calibrate your T-cogs, and get ready to roll out! As we're going to take a look at the critically successful but much maligned Michael Bay film. Wait, I seriously wrote calibrate your T-cogs. Get ready guys, because you've got the touch, you've got the power. Oh, Jesus. It's Michael Bay's Transformers. While this movie has received a lot of hatred from nerd culture and, more specifically, fans of the G1 series, I'll admit that I really liked the movie when I first saw it. I wasn't even born when the original series premiered, and have only recently been catching up thanks to syndicated reruns in between episodes of My Little Pony. So many ponies. My intro to Transformers was with Beast Wars, and then later with the so-called Unicron trilogy, so I had no emotional attachment to the G1 series. It wasn't until I watched Revenge of the Fallen and then revisited the first movie that I finally understood the hatred for it, and finally saw the rather obvious cracks in the armor. Cracks so big you could drive an asteroid through them. Oh, shut up. Now, the first live-action Transformers movie wasn't all that bad. Some good stuff did come out of it. Not a lot, but some. For one thing, I like a few of the redesigns for the Cybertronians, as an update was due for a few of them. Changing Optimus from a standard COE flat-nose truck to a standard American truck design made him look better to me. I can see what Michael Bay was going for in the design of the Decepticons, what with them all being metallic and gray and soldier-like, and Megatron looked awesome, but everyone else needed to be a different color because you couldn't tell them apart. The only reason Megatron was originally gunmetal gray was because he was in fact a gray metal gun, and even that was kind of weird at the time, and stupid.
At last we have reawakened, and now it is time for Megatron, to rule this pathetic planet.
Decepticons, transform!
Wait, what the fuck is this? I'm a gun? Seriously? I already have my own fucking gun on my arm. What's the point of transforming when I need someone else to fucking operate? Starscream, what form did you get? I got a devastating jet fighter. It's awesome! What? What about Skywarp and Thundercracker? The same as me, Megatron. Isn't that oddly convenient? What about Soundwave? Oh, let me guess. An attack helicopter? An aerial combat drone? Actually, he's a cassette player. A cassette player? Ha ha ha! Well, at least I'm not that lame.
I can also summon a robot falcon and panther to do my work for me.
Now, I loved the music in this movie, especially the orchestral stuff, including what is quite possibly the greatest character introduction song in movie history, Hans Zimmer's Arrival to Earth. My only question is, where was the Transformers theme? Seriously, the theme song that everyone remembers from the original show wasn't in this movie, and I know there were 3 versions recorded, all of which were awesome, so why were none used? Now, while the design and remodel of some of the Cybertronians was questionable, the actual act of transformation looked pretty badass, my favorite being Bone Crushers on the highway. I love CGI done right, and this is definitely one such occasion. You've got the underside sweep, the fluid motion, the moving transformation. Oh, it's just so cool. And now that we've gotten the good stuff out of the way, we have a problem. Actually, a lot of problems, largely stemming from the fact that this movie script was written, and rewritten in mind for a larger demographic. I think you can see where this is going. Now, this was a large part because of Michael Bay, who originally declined the directing chair because he didn't want to be a part of a stupid toy movie.
Mind you, the entire production team at Paramount, including Steven Spielberg, were heavily involved in changing the original treatment from a robot-centric film to the version we ended up with, but it was Michael Bay who thought that a movie focused on the Transformers themselves was too kiddie. Yes, Michael effing Bay thought that a movie about talking robots was too sophomoric for his sophisticated taste. Michael Bay, a man of high art and truly, truly sophisticated ideals.
Bumblebee, stop lubricating the man.
Now, this idea that the Transformers' original concept wasn't a good enough idea to carry a movie leads us to our main problem with the film: not enough time spent with the Transformers themselves as the main characters, and instead making the main characters into whiny, annoying human characters. Now, I've heard some people argue that this was a smart idea because it's hard to relate to giant CG robots and it's better to have actual people there to focus on. Normally, I would agree with the CG argument. However, first I would point out the Pixar movie WALL-E, the first 30 minutes specifically, is a counter-argument. And secondly, let me show you some analogies as to why a shift in focus was such a problem for the story.
Imagine if in the movie versions of Batman, pick your own director here, if they decided not to focus on the Dark Knight himself, but instead centered around Commissioner Gordon. Mind you, the plot would still be driven by Batman and his character development, but we'd be stuck seeing it all from Gordon's perspective. It would make for a weird movie. Or if in the Harry Potter movies, the main character was actually Ron Weasley as he tagged along with Harry, while Harry went about the story normally. It would be weird because the character that the audience becomes closest to has only a few impacts on the plot, and is clearly the less important character. A movie can be made from the perspective of a side character, but only if the script is designed that way, not when it's changed from the source material. As a final analogy, imagine Dragon Ball Z. However, instead of focusing on Goku, you instead focus the series on the perpetual sidekick, Krillin. He's still as useless as he always was, he rarely affects the plot, and always has to be saved by Goku, who is usually the one who finally beats the bad guys. Which is strangely identical to the live-action Transformers movies, what with Optimus constantly saving everyone and being the only one who can ever beat the Decepticons without help.
Oh my god. Guys, Optimus Prime is really a Super Saiyan! Whoa.
Autobots, roll out! Kakarot!
So, given the fact that this movie's problems stem from a lack of focus and a shift to the wrong characters, what would I have changed in order to make this movie really more than meets the eye? Well, sit back, dear viewer, and check it out as I go through how I would make it. Bite me. Quite simply, the first step in making the Transformers movie is to look at the source material, realize that it's not going to win you an Oscar, and just have fun with it. You're making a movie based on giant fighting robots that transform into vehicles. That's awesome! Relish in the awesome! You don't need humans to make the movie bearable if you have a good writer and great voice actors, because the job of a good writing team is to make the audience care about the characters. Now, we could keep the motif of a boy and his car since it creates a great connection between Sam and Bumblebee, but we need to take it further and create more opportunities for the humans and Cybertronians to interact with each other as to create more relationships. We also need to get rid of a lot of the human characters since they aren't even supposed to be the focus of the movie. Also, to any members of the United States military or family of servicemen and women, what the members of the United States military go through on a daily basis, especially if they are involved in combat or operations abroad to secure our freedom, is more badass and more important than anything that can be shown on a screen, be it a movie or a television screen. That being said, this movie gets way too close to hero worship. And in a movie about gigantic fighting robots, that just doesn't fit. So for the sake of this movie, the role of the actual military needs to be toned down in order to focus on the unrealistic aspects of the movie. Well, that got awkward way too quickly. Quick, get a joke in here. I don't care, any kind. Let's go ahead and ditch all the useless characters like Anthony Anderson, the hot nerd and her friends, and Sam's awkward tree-climbing friend. Next, we've got to tone down the awkwardness with Sam's parents, because the way they're portrayed is really, really damn annoying.
So defensive. Were you masturbating?
Okay, now that we've ditched all the unnecessary subplots and side characters, it's time to focus on the Transformers themselves and give them the screen time they deserve. For starters, let's have the movie start out as normal, what with the Allspark tumbling through space with Optimus Prime's awesome monologue, but this time, also have the Autobot and Decepticon ships chasing after it.
You could do the intro like that from Beast Wars, with just the ships visible and maybe just the Cybertronians' voices, so as not to ruin the surprise of what they look like later on. Also, don't just make Megatron the secondary MacGuffin of the movie. Let him be the Decepticon who first attacks Sam and then ends up fighting Bumblebee. I mean, he and Barricade's faces and designs are so similar, especially in movement, he may as well have been already.
Here's my reasoning. The first 2 times in this movie that we see Megatron, it's in flashbacks to the war on Cybertron and then to his actions when he crashes to Earth trying to find the Allspark. This creates a problem because all of his actions to that point happened before the actions of the movie itself. Yes, he was the instigating factor of the war on Cybertron, and yes, he was the reason all this happened in the first place, but we, the audience, have no attachment to the character, either good or bad attachment, because so far, none of his actions actually take place during the real plot. That is, not until he's reintroduced in the 3rd act.
And at that point, he's frozen and completely helpless. And from the looks on our characters' faces, even they don't seem to think he's a threat. Therefore, I propose that we have Megatron be an active participant in the movie from the beginning. He could show up after the attack on the base in Qatar to receive a briefing from Blackout, and be in the skies over the village where Scorponok attacks, issuing the command for Barricade to proceed with hunting Sam, if we have to continue with the original casting. He could lead the attack on the dam, and then everything would proceed normally from there. Oh, and during the final fight, instead of Josh Duhamel, no, I don't know his character's name, taking out Blackout on his own, he should team up with Ironhide to finish him off, in order to create a friendship like Sam and Bumblebee's. That would justify and give more meaning to having Ironhide drop him off back at home at the end of the movie.
Now, this wouldn't be a perfect fix by any means, since in order to make the movie as good as it can be, we'd have to build it from the ground up, but for the time being, this tinkers with the film story just enough to make it more bearable to us Transformers fans. Now, I may revisit the other live-action films at some point in the future, but for right now, as I look out my window, there's a signal gleaming in the distance, one that I have to answer, in order to deal with the superstitious, cowardly lots of Batman Forever. See you next episode.